Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description and every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 2, Episode 1 of Paramount Plus's Mayor of Kingstown, entitled Never Missed a Pigeon. The episode title is based off of one line that's uttered in this episode. Mike goes to visit this old black dude on this dock. I think he was fishing or something. I can't recall, but he was putting a message on a pigeon to send to his son in Detroit. And for some reason, he doesn't want to make calls, or he doesn't want to do texts. And he's like, he makes this poor argument of like, how many times have you missed a call or missed a text? And I'm like, okay, so if you missed the call or missed the text, you can just call back. Like, I don't think like the next step is like, oh, I can't get through on my call. Let me send a pigeon. But whatever the case may be, he claims that he's never missed a pigeon, even though he's missed calls. So that's why he sends pigeons. I don't know what the point of that was. It doesn't tie into anything else in this episode. I can only think that it's going to come into play later in the season. But then that makes me wonder, why did we name the first episode after this pigeon scene when there's a whole lot of really important scenes that are really eventful and pivotal for the rest of the season that aren't mentioned in the title? But I don't know what's up with the pigeon thing, but I just thought that was an interesting scene. And then I went back and looked at the episode title. I'm like, that's what they named it after, the pigeon scene? But anyway, I wanted to talk, before I get started talking about this episode, I did want to talk about the show as a whole briefly. I binged watched this very recently in preparation for the second season, just because I'm like totally into Taylor Sheridan stuff. So I figured, let me check this one out. I really enjoyed it. I'm not going to talk about season 1 a lot right now, but I am going to record a third episode of Mike's Musings that will be out, I want to say the 26th or the 28th, one of those 2 days. And that's where I'm going to talk about all the shows that I haven't regularly covered on this channel that I watch in my own free time. And even though I am obviously covering season 2 of Mayor of Kingstown, I am going to talk about my experience watching season 1 on Mike's Musings. So that's a Patreon exclusive. So if you're interested in that, I think you have to join. Yeah, you have to join at the $10 tier to get Mike's Musings. But yeah, I'll be talking about season 1 on there. It's not going to be a whole thing where I'm just like going into detail, because I'm going to probably be talking about like 10 different shows on this one. So I'm only going to talk about it for a little bit. But if you are curious about my thoughts on season 1, that's where you'll find them. And that'll be out, like I said, the 26th or the 28th, something like that. So moving on, I really like this episode. And this one picks up right where season 1 left off with the aftermath of the prison riot. And I love pretty much every direction they seem to be taking this story based off of the prison riot fallout. So, like, for us as viewers, we see a prison riot like on a TV show or in a movie, and it's like, oh man, what a great episode, or what a great movie. That scene was really exciting. It was scary. It was intense. It was suspenseful, whatever the case may be, right? And we appreciate that prison riot scene for what it was in that moment and our experience with it. But we rarely get to see the aftermath of a prison riot or what the fallout is like. And I like the fact that this episode essentially was like, okay, the rioters have been subdued. Now what? Like, what happens now? How does this affect the the dynamics, the personal dynamics within the prison, like the interactions between the guards and the inmates. How does this affect what happens out on the streets? Like, I like all of that stuff that you don't normally think about when you think about a prison riot. You just think, okay, what happened during the riot? But you don't think about how that can change the prison from in a very fundamental way going forward. And I like how this episode and possibly this season is going to explore that. And I think that's really cool. So in this episode, we learn about how a prison moves forward after a riot. Not just any riot, though, but a riot of this degree. Because this isn't just like a small riot in the cafeteria and a couple of inmates got stabbed or beaten and we got it under control after 10 minutes. Apparently, there are 197 dead people, and that's probably a combination of inmates and guards. We know at least one person has escaped, and apparently, I don't know if I don't think we saw this during the riot scene. I'm not sure, but apparently some of the guards got raped during the riot as well. So this was a very serious riot, whereas it was like, the inmates took over the prison, and I'm interested in how the prison being taken over by the inmates and how that's changed the dynamic within the prison. I'm super interested in this angle of how the guards who still work in the prison, how their situation with the inmates has changed and how they're going to handle it. Mike says that the riot destroyed the illusion that prisons are run by the guards. And we see, like, now after the riot, it's sheer chaos. I said I want to see how the guards responded, and I like that we got to see that in this episode. Like, we see these prisoners living in the tents, in the yards. We see these guards clearly don't have any issue stopping violence on the inmates. And what's interesting is, why would they? Like, given how the riot turned out, why would they care about prisoners killing each other? Like, they're not going to. They're gonna be like, okay, if this is what y'all want to do, go ahead and do it, and we'll just see what happens, because you ain't getting out of here. So if all y'all kill each other, it just makes our job easier. Like, they just do not care. And then with no leadership in the prison, there's no leadership in the streets either. Like, and the show has made that point several times. It made it several times in season 1, and it made it several times in this episode. We hear Bunny even say it outright, like, without leadership in the prison, we don't the prison leadership feeds into the streets leadership, and without leadership in the prison, they don't have leadership in the streets. He talks about how they can't even choose a new leader because so many of his people got killed, and new leaders are chosen by essentially, it sounds like he says, by killing cops on the street. So it's like there's a whole lot and I think all of that is gonna play out in some way. Like the threat of killing a cop out on the streets in the real world, I think that's actually going to play out. Whatever dynamic needs to happen within the prison for them to establish a new leadership hierarchy, I think that's going to happen. And I'm really interested in seeing both of those things. But there's an interesting moment where they kind of like juxtapose the chaos that's happening within the prison with the chaos that's happening outside of it. And I thought this was a really good pairing of scenes here. And I can't remember if we see them. I think we see them back to back, but they're not like cross-cutting them. I think we see the full entirety of the one and the other. But the first is inside the prison. We see this guy get jumped, and I think they do something. We don't see it, but they must do something to his nuts. Like, they step on him or something, because he's like bleeding from that area really bad afterwards. And we see the guards watching this, and we hear a guard radio like, "Hey, there's 2 guys scrapping out here. Are we gonna do anything about it?" And then we don't hear the response, and he's just like, "Yeah, I didn't think so." And we see him just watch this happen, and he allows it to happen. And then that is kind of juxtaposed with, I don't want to say juxtaposed, because it's not meant to show contrast necessarily. It's just meant to show that the same thing that's happening in the prison is also happening on the outside. They're kind of like scenes that are meant to be paired together to kind of like run that point home. And on the outside, we see a guy, he jumps up and he shoots up a car, and then he sicks a pit bull through the sunroof to attack this guy, which apparently happened for quite some time, because the police arrive on the scene and the pit bull is still eating this guy. And the one bald cop has to shoot him. But I thought that was a pretty powerful pairing of scenes. Oh, shout out to alliteration. A pretty powerful pairing of scenes, because because I like the scenes themselves individually, but I like the idea of, like, we said there's going to be chaos with no leadership in both the prison and outside. Here's an example of that. So I don't know. I just like the fact that they gave us an example of it. And it was two particularly brutal examples as well. But speaking of the whole gang situation and Bunny, Bunny. I'm sorry, I can't get it together because I'm thinking about what I want to say about Bunny, and it's like fucking up my ability to say it now. But Bunny wants order, right? And he warns, like I said, they might try to kill a cop on the outside in order to help with the leadership in general, which I'm totally here for. But where the fuck was he perched atop that roof? Perched atop that roof like Batman when Mike calls him. He's like, if he was just standing or walking or pacing, I'd have been like, oh, okay, Bunny's on a roof now, whatever. But he was like doing like I'm on like kneeling like on one knee on the corner of the roof, overlooking the city like Batman and shit. Like, I didn't have Bunny's new post-up spot being on the roof of a Metro PCS on my 2023 bingo card. But that, I don't know, that was really funny to me for whatever reason. I don't know. That I didn't come into it expecting Bunny's new post-up spot to be my favorite aspect of the episode, but I don't know. Him being on top of that Metro PCS, I'm just like, why? and I like the fact that his reasoning, he's like, I don't want to get, shot in a drive-by sitting in that yard or whatever. He's like, they're not going to get me up here. They have to have a helicopter or something. I'm not going to guarantee he's going to be killed by helicopter, but you don't say something like that without setting up something down the line. And my, I guess, concern for Bunny making it out of this season is it can't be any higher than it is right now. Like, that felt very ominous. They're going to find a way to, like for him to go, like, I'm up here so I don't get killed. He's going to get killed while he's up there. I don't know how it's going to happen. I'm not going to say it's going to be a helicopter like you said, but like maybe one of his homeboys is going to betray him. I don't know. He's going to die on top of that Metro PCS. But another bit of fallout from the riot that I enjoyed is this side story with the one black CO named Kareem. We first see him, he's like hiding in this, I don't even want to say hiding, because I don't even think he was hiding, but like he's experiencing heavy PTSD after this riot. Like I can't remember if he was like naked or if he just had underwear on, but he at least didn't have a shirt on. And he's like in like the fetal position in one of his closets, hiding in tears over what happened to this riot, like serious PTSD. And I'm like, wow, this is, because you don't think of that. Like, if you're a guard who experienced a riot, but experienced not even a riot, but this specific one, just for how far that went. Like, if you're a guard who experienced that, that's not going to be a thing like, oh, I made it home and I'm good. Like, you're probably never going to be okay from that. Like, to the moment where Kareem dies, he's probably going to be suffering or experiencing some sort of PTSD from that riot. And I like the fact that we don't even think about that, I thought was interesting. But I like the fact that this show is taking an idea like that we wouldn't even think about, but then also probably is overlooked, and it probably happens, I'd say probably fairly often, I would think, that guards experience not this, but some form of PTSD in their job, and now they have to go sit in front of a shrink and either get back okay or convince that shrink that they're okay, which we see Kareem doing in this episode. And when he's doing this, he sounds calm, collected, reasonable, logical. All of those things to make a case to go back to work, when in the last scene, we saw him either naked or only wearing his drawers in his closet crying because of the PTSD he's experiencing. And then the next time we see him, he's asking for his job back and denying being raped, which I don't think we saw any of the guards get raped, but they talk about it in this episode, which makes me think like, okay, I'm supposed to accept that this happened, which I'm fine with. It feels like they wanted to add that in after the fact, like, we can just say that they got raped. We can't obviously go back and change the episode to show it, but we can say it, and we can write it into these episodes, and people will have to just accept that it happened off screen, which I'm fine with. But he denies that this ever happened, which I'm watching and I'm like, I don't think I saw that. But I mean, if they want to, they imply that it did happen, because they have someone talk about like guards getting raped with their own billy clubs. Like, so they imply that it did happen. I like the idea of him lying about what he's going through so he can get back into the prison and get revenge. And I'm thinking that when I'm seeing him being calm about it, I'm like, and he asking to go to work, I'm like, he can't care about his check that much. He was just naked crying a minute ago. I'm like, he probably want to go in there and get revenge. And then the shrink is like, do you plan on seeking vengeance? Seeking vengeance. I don't know if he said seeking vengeance. That felt very Batman to me. And I didn't expect to reference Batman twice in this video. But when he asked that, I'm like, okay, so that's definitely what he wants. And then it leads into, this exact scene where he does end up going back to work, and we see 3 prisoners with bags over their heads. It look very Taliban-y. They have these bags over their heads, and he walks up and he beats them with the end of his gun, and we don't know what happened to those guys. I'm assuming they're dead. I'm also assuming that these 3 guys are behind whatever it was that happened to him. Presumably these 3 guys are the ones that raped him, assuming he got raped. It was by these 3 guys. But yeah, I really like that scene. I thought that was really powerful. The idea of someone having to how does someone recover or move forward from that kind of experience? I like the idea of this show exploring that in this season. So really excited for that. So let's talk about what I didn't like, because there are a couple of things that I didn't like. And what I didn't like in this episode, unfortunately, was the 2 female protagonists that we have on this show. Miriam and Iris. And to be more specific, what I didn't like was the way these characters were written. I have a big problem with female characters being written the same way all the time. And granted, I don't know, did I look up who wrote this episode? No. But I'm going to assume that a man wrote it, because no woman would write a female character this shittily. So there's got to be a male who wrote this. Why are the female characters always written as these, like, emotional and illogical people who only exist to be a thorn in the foot of the male protagonist? Like let's start with Miriam. We see her twice in this episode, and both times she's a fucking moron. And like they did not make her that way in season 1. I don't like, but like after 1 episode in season 2, I now see the Miriam character as a fucking idiot, and that should not be what I see. But the first time we see her having her class, and it looks like it now is no longer in a classroom. It looks like it's in a gymnasium of some sort. And there's justifiably a lot of armed police officers in there watching the class, because there was just a insanely massive and violent prison riot. And not to mention, which they don't even mention it in this episode, one of those female inmates killed that one guard last season too. So of course they're gonna have security in there. Of course there's gonna be armed officers in there. And then she's like, I can't teach with all of these cops in here. All of these cops in there walking around doing nothing. You can't teach in there because there are other people like that. To me is just like that is not reasonable. That's just someone having a hissy fit because they can. Like there's no way that those cops just existing in that room are so distracting that you can't teach your class. And then she's like, well, either they have to go or the class is canceled. They're like, all right, I guess class is canceled. And that was, to me, that was the right response. Because she had no reason to be that upset about them being in there. They had every reason to be there. That was a completely stupid request on her part, and she deserved to have her class canceled for being a fucking idiot. I don't have any issues with stupid people having things happen to them that they don't like as a result of being stupid. She was being stupid, now her class was canceled, and she was left standing in that middle of that empty gym looking like an idiot, and that's what she gets. And then the second time we see her, again, and reminding you, she works in a prison, and she walks out of this store, and there's this super conspicuous guy hiding his face. Like, oh, I hope this woman don't see me. And then she walks by him, not paying any attention, goes to open up her car. Of course, she gets robbed and beaten. Like, why would someone who works in a prison be that oblivious about their surroundings, especially when you're out walking out of a liquor store and there's a guy standing by your car doing this? Of course, how do you just go, okay, go, everything seems fine here. And then she gets beaten and robbed, and they catch the guy, and they make it sound as if maybe like they roughed him up a little bit extra because she was Mike and Kyle's mother or whatever. But they say, like, okay, this guy has a huge rap sheet, and she's just like, actually, I wrote the quote down, the quote that really pissed me off. She says she's not gonna press charges, and she's making this like police are the bad guys kind of argument, which again works any other time. except for when you were actually robbed and beat. Like you were the victim of an assault and a robbery. And she's making it sound like the problem is the police in this scenario. The problem is the police all the time. Except this time. And the guy is like, he's gonna kill somebody someday. And she's like, no, your gang will kill him first. Shut the fuck. That doesn't even make any sense. Like, again, if he hadn't done anything, or he had stolen a Butterfinger out of there and they beat him and they're like, oh, he has a juvenile rap sheet. It's ridiculous. That's why we beat him. He resisted arrest. And all he did was steal a Butterfinger or something. Then you make the case you guys are creating criminals. You guys are creating bad people by doing shitty police work. You're that point that she's trying to make works when their reactions are too much for the crime. But you just got beaten and robbed. Like, and he has a long rap sheet. He deserves to go to jail. He deserves to get charged. You don't get to do the fucking virtue signaling, standing on your soapbox like, oh, it's the police who are the problem. And you got me out here defending the police. Don't nobody hate the police more than me. Like, I hate the police are useless to us being black men, black people. The police are useless and worthless to us. So I'm completely on the side of police creating criminals and all. Like, the argument I'm completely in support of, but it doesn't make sense within this scene and within this context for her to try to do this little holier than thou bullshit as if they roughed up a kid who stole a Butterfinger and not a kid who beat and robbed an old woman. Like completely implausible. But like, it's just like men. Again, I'm assuming a man wrote this episode. Men just seem like they just don't know how to write women because we don't understand women, because we're stupid when it comes to relationships and women. And like, no one thought maybe we should have a women write for the women. And I know you don't want to have like one episode that's written by where like the male stuff is written by a man and the female stuff is written by, well, of course you don't want to have that, but you also don't want to have men writing the exact same female character who's stupid and emotional and a thorn in the side of the male protagonist. You don't want that character in every single show, but that's what we get, is this lazily written female character. And I didn't feel this way about Miriam in season 1. I didn't feel this way about Iris in I didn't like Iris in season 1. And I don't like Iris in this episode either, because she's the other person that irritated me here. The first thing she did that irritated me, and granted, it took late in the episode for this to happen, but we only see her one time prior, which is this boat scene at the beginning. She gets mad at Mike for setting her up in this witness protection thing, and because he can't come with her. So it's like, okay, I set you up in this witness protection thing. You gotta go. I can't come. She walks off with an attitude with Mike. And I'm like, after all he's done for you, he killed that Duke guy. Like, all he's done for you, you have the unmitigated goddamn gall to get an attitude with him because he can't go with you to witness protection. How helpless do you want to portray this woman when you tried to go the complete opposite and show her as very strong and able to handle whatever's thrown at her no matter how bad? They painted this Iris character as tough as nails in season 1, and now she looks spineless and weak because she's got an attitude because she has to go to witness protection without Mike. Oh, like, come on, man. Like, well, like, and then she agrees to go. And then she goes, and then like she overhears them talking about Milo possibly having escaped. So now she's safe, is hearing the reason why she had to be put into a safe place. Hey, that guy that used to own you is out, possibly out and free, likely probably gonna want to come and kill you. And then she takes that information and goes, yeah, let me leave now. So now that you know how dangerous it is for you to not be there, you go, okay, now I don't want to be here anymore. And it just feels like being pointlessly combative. Like, I just want to not do what I'm being told to do. It doesn't even matter if what I'm being told to do is the right thing or the thing that's best for me or what's safe. I just don't like the fact that someone I don't know is telling me to do something I don't want to do. So I'm just going to do the opposite. Like, and I'm just like, what is she, 12? Like, I don't know. And then she returns to Mike at the end of the episode, and I feel like I know he's not thinking this, even though he should be, but he should be kind of just like, oh my God, I cannot get rid of her. And he should want to get rid of her, but the problem is I don't think he does. So, again, but despite my objections to Miriam and Iris. Like I said, I really enjoyed this episode, and I really like what they're setting up for the rest of the season with the fallout from the prison riot, how that's affecting this Kareem guy, how that's affecting the gangs both in the prison and outside, and how that's going to affect Bunny with what's going on. Like all of the stuff that they're setting up there, I think looks really, really good. And then lastly, I'm not sure how to feel about this because we didn't get much, but we get one scene with Kyle. He looks like he's joined like the Coast Guard or something, and there's a whole scene where he thinks that he's raiding, I guess, a boat that's gonna have drugs on it, and it ends up just being maple syrup, and they're just skipping, they're just trying to not pay tariffs, and he goes off on this one other Coast Guard guy who was just bad at his job. I don't know how they're gonna tie this back into the main show. Like, I don't know if like they're gonna come across a situation that's gonna force Kyle to be back involved with Mike in some way, or if they're just gonna keep Kyle on this Coast Guard thing, and we're just gonna see like we're gonna have like Mike's story and then we're gonna have Kyle's story separate. I don't know, but I'm curious to see what's gonna happen with Kyle going forward. Are they even gonna try to tie him into the main story or not? And then I'm curious about that one black guy with the pigeon. Like, what was the point of that? So, interesting stories going into episode 2. Looking forward to it. I really enjoyed this first episode. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'll see you guys next week for episode 2. Peace.